Hey guys, so today's video is kind of different from what I usually do. There's a clear lack of Garden of Banana as of recent, so I've recently been getting back into Minecraft a little bit, because, especially since there's Dungeons 2 coming out. I've played Dungeons a bit, and you guys know I'm a freak for biology and evolution and speculative evolution, that kind of thing. Wanted to make a little video about how I interpret some of the mobs in Minecraft. These can be vastly different to what people usually say and theorize about these mobs, but I still kind of wanted to give a shot and just show you guys in a more comprehensive video instead of like just snippets of like text and images. I'm not going to mention all of them, but I will mention some of the more popular mobs. But if you guys want to hear what I think and theorize and how I interpret the other mobs, let me know in the comments. One thing to mention is that these interpretations can be also vastly different from what vanilla content offers, like canon content, what it offers. For example, Minecraft Vanilla, Minecraft Dungeons, Minecraft Legends, the Minecraft movie. Oh god, the Minecraft movie. I don't even want to talk about that thing. So keep that in mind, that this is not really accurate to what is already presented by Mojang, but still wanted to give a fun twist on some of the content that is already presented. So why don't we start with the icon of Minecraft, the creeper? I have 3 different species of the creeper, but let's firstly talk about the dynamite, which is like the main creeper species. It's around the height of a human, a little shorter, but they're actually not like any leaves or any like monster or alien or whatever. Oh my god, that's my cat, I'm sorry. No, we're talking about a cat while we're talking about a creeper. That's a strange link, isn't it? Anyways, the creepers are, in my head, they are reptiles. They are particularly pterosaurs, you know, those big flying reptiles that went extinct. So the dynamite creeper is actually a flightless pterosaur, but one of the species can fly. We will get to that later. So dynamites, as I said, they are the most well-known species. They live in the temperate and polar zones and other places like caves, since they adapted themselves to live into both caves and the surface. And unlike the other species, which I will get to, this species in particular is very villainized. It's very antagonized by society. I guess like both like players and villagers, whatever. Like just the society that we can have here in Minecraft. They're villainized because their boundaries, I guess, they're constantly being broken in the same way that maybe also a hippopotamus is, and they're also kind of goddamn territorial as well. And the reason they explode is actually because I like to imagine that there's like this myth, this like fairy tale that is being told to children when they go to sleep. There's this myth that the creepers were jealous of the dragons, like the Ender Dragon or just like regular dragons. They were jealous of their ability to produce fire. So they went to action, you know, that thing from Minecraft Legends, one of the 3 hosts. I actually really like those 3 hosts. I'm gonna mention them a few times in the video. So they went to action, and they asked if they could also breathe fire like the dragons, because they also wanted something to defend themselves with, you know? And action gave them this organ to produce fire, but the creepers took advantage of this new ability and they start wreaking havoc and just burning villages and forests, everything. So action punished the creepers by making them explode whenever they would want to breathe this fire. So for this kind of greed, they just now live as bombs. But that's, as I said, that's just a myth. It's not really true. It's not proven to be true. The way that creepers got this explosion ability actually is pretty similar to how dragons would get this kind of ability. So it was they adapted this organ from consuming a lot of like charcoal and sulfur, like when some of their ancestors kind of did that, and they developed this organ to produce smoke and fire to intimidate other opponents or animals or predators or whatever. But eventually it kind of spiraled out of control, and whenever the creeper is under like too much stress, it just pops like a balloon, explodes, and fucking kills everything in its path. And I would say this kind of rivalry with humans is because this kind of explosive ability made them really sought after, you know, kind of like creeper skins, like harvesting their leather and maybe their organs, maybe their heads, their bones, made them really desirable as accessories. So this is why it's pretty common for a creeper to immediately perceive a human as a threat, which is why, they're so hostile in the game. Years of such mistreatment by humans really will lead to something like this. They also are often depicted in art as demons and enemies and everything. And this is also why cats, like house cats, are perceived to be like these divine guardians that defend the humans from the creepers. It's also particularly pretty common to be depicted like that in art. Cats, like maybe attacking or tying around creepers, kind of like stealing them away from the world. Or maybe just them like attacking the creepers. But that's, as I said, that's more popular with the dynamite species. Because if we talk about the other species, which I've thought about. For example, the bolt creeper. It's a much smaller species, but they can fly. They're the one species that can fly. They live in deserts and canyons. They kind of like blend in with the sand. They're pretty skittish, actually, compared to the dynamite, but they will cause mayhem in packs. If you hit one of them, they will all fly towards you like a bolt and explode. They live in like big groups, kind of like birds do, I guess. Like flying together in hunt of like food and fleeing when there's danger. So if it's just like one of them, they won't hurt you, but if it's like a huge pack, hurt one of them and you are a target. And in the region where they live in, they're usually not villainized but more treated as just an animal that has to be respected. Sometimes they might bring mayhem into like farmland sometimes, but this is why cats exist, house cats. This is also why creepers hate the smell of felines. Especially like the dynamite creeper. If you guys know the regal tiger from Legends, I like to think that this is apex predator. I used to live in like the colder regions where like the dynamite usually resides, and they used to hunt the creeper without like causing it to explode. Cause they would kill like really fast, usually successful, but sometimes, not really. So the creeper just gets stressed out and explodes and kills the tiger. Both creepers are sometimes hunted by the house cat, and the dynamite used to be hunted by the regal tiger until that regal tiger also became extinct because of overhunting. The purple pelts were like really desirable, so that's one thing. There's also the third species, which is the rocket creeper, which is much bigger than the dynamite creeper, like twice its size. It lives in like tropical areas, like jungles and shit. And among the cultures that live in like these jungles, they're more interpreted as like divine seers, overseers, something like that. They blend in with the trees like really well, and they won't outright like hunt down a human like the dynamite do, like perceive them immediately as a threat, but just get too close to a rocket and it might explode. And my god, that thing is, you can see the difference of names here, why it's called the rocket creeper. They sometimes might be worshipped by the cultures that live in the jungle, or maybe there's some clans that name themselves after the rocket creeper, but who knows? So, the next thing I'd want to talk about is the Enderman. Another lovely mob. As we know in the game, they only attack if you look at them. And this is why I like to interpret them as an alien species that is very ape-like. Because guys, how gorillas, for example, they tend to attack you if you look into their eyes. Eye contact between, like, family members is usually fine for them, but if you're a complete stranger, my god, that is a challenge to a life and death match. They're also the only species of Enderman that can leave the end. Unlike the other species, which I'll get to, they're based on the dungeons species, which is why they're regarded as one of the most intelligent species in the end, because they've explored the other dimensions like the nether and the overworld, and they learned so much about the environments that they bring that knowledge back to the end to their families, And this is also why it's theorized by scientists and researchers that the common Enderman is the one that built these structures in the end. You know, maybe they teleported around the overworld and the Nether, and they learned the architecture of the humans and the piglins, and they felt inspired, I guess, to make something themselves. So they started constructing these structures in the end, especially since it's like the most plausible along with the teleportation across the dimensions, is also because of how they look, how their anatomy is constructed. They're like the most human-like, which could most likely let them easily build compared to the other species, like the Tyrant Enderman, the Spider Enderman, and the Flamethroat Enderman, which I'll get to later. Which means, for example, they could easily like carry blocks. You know, they already kind of do that in the game, right? They could easily manipulate blocks and place them around without getting like so quickly tired that they have to go back to knuckle walking. Like, for example, the Enderscent, I guess, kind of knuckle walks. Another thing is the water thing with Enderman. They hate water, they get damaged by it. I like to theorize that water from like the overworld particularly damages their nervous system, which is like a sensory thing, and it like really hurts them on the skin. But you know how in dungeons there are like these geysers or like these pools of like this white water? I kind of like to think that maybe that water is safe to them and maybe safe to drink, but not the water from the overworld. I like to depict Enderman with these holes along their cheekbones, which are kind of like labial pits, like pythons have those. Like we have noses, the Endermen have the sensory receptors for like scent and heat, and it also helps them see in the dark better. Also, kind of like how cats have whiskers, you know? It's a very sensitive organ, and maybe Endermen show affection by rubbing those part of the body into another body, whatever. I don't know. Before I get to the other Enderman species, I wanted to bring up the Endermite real quick. I like to think that it is actually a parasite that bites into the Enderman's skin and digs into their muscle, kind of like how ticks do or horseflies. When they bite in, there's like no sensation of pain, but like when Endermen teleport, the Endermite might fall off, and the Endermen quickly like want to kill it because they perceive it as a threat. You know, it digs into their skin, so obviously they're going to want to kill that thing. But yeah, to shortly just get into the Enderman species, the other ones include the Endercent, which is more commonly called the Tyrant Enderman, and they're like the biggest species. They're also like the most feared in the Enderman society, I guess, which is where the name also comes from. There's the Spider Enderman, which is the, what is it called? Snareling. The Snarelings from dungeons as well. So they have like this organ in their chest, and you can also see it protruding from their back. They have this organ that's kind of like modified phlegm, like you have in your throat or in your nose, I guess. It's used to trap prey or enemies or whatever, or to blind others. But they also use that organ kind of like Siamang primate species. They have like this organ, like this throat that they can inflate. It also helps them to make like these calls, like territorial or just like communicate for like really long distances with this organ. It helps them do that, but also kind of like for intimidation and display. And there's also the Flamethroat Enderman, which is the Blastling from dungeons. They're more built like gorillas than the common Enderman, and they're also pretty aggressive compared to the common Enderman. They have like this fiery organ around their neck that they can like grab into and throw like a piece of fire at an enemy. There's probably been attempts by researchers to befriend an Enderman, but I don't think there's been any success. And one fun thing about the Enderman and the society in Minecraft is that there's no like proper depiction of an Enderman above the mouth because of the eyes. So anyways, why don't we move on to another mob that I absolutely love, the Warden. So, with the announcement of Minecraft Dungeons 2, I've noticed that my interpretation of the Warden is vastly different to what the canon material implies. But as we've said in the beginning, that's not relevant. I interpret this thing to be a giant mole mixed with the giant sloth a little bit. There's 4 different species I've made, but I'm just going to talk about the Godslayer Warden, which is the species we have in the game. So the name Godslayer Warden comes from the fact that the Wither was once defeated by one of these wardens. There's like multiple pieces of art and literature made by the people who lived in the deep dark cities, the ancient cities that we have in the game. One of these paintings speaks about the Warden being one of the few beings that aren't affected by the Wither's serpentine tongue, which is the withering effect, but it is the only being that will fight back. But besides the cultural relevance and how it is depicted in art, the wardens are like these giant omnivorous moles. They have these giant claws that they use to dig into the rock and the dirt and to attack, of course. It is like 5 katanas sticked into a hand of a giant bear sloth creature. Like, it is that powerful, that muscular. Fun thing about the warden and the skulk is that the skulk is actually kind of like mushroom, kind of like a fungus. You know how mold is kind of similar to a mold. They have a kind of like a symbiotic relationship where the skulk will warn about creatures walking by, like maybe a zombie or a human, and it alerts the warden. The warden attacks, hunts down this creature that the skulk warned it of. And this relationship benefits both the warden and the skulk because, as you guys know, in the game, skulk feed off of, I guess, carcasses or souls, whatever. Let's just say it's carcasses. And when the warden hunts down the creature that's walking across the skulk, it will kill it, eat it a little bit, and leave the rest of the carcass to rot on the skulk, and the skulk will eat all of that later. The wardens actually, besides like other like organisms that roam around the deep dark, they also love eating the glowberries, which were like pretty commonly grown by the people who lived in the ancient cities. So the citizens of like the ancient cities didn't actually have like a bad relationship with the wardens, but they were treating them with a lot of respect and caution. So whenever a warden would walk into a glowberry farm, those wardens wouldn't be like shoved away or attacked, because those people knew how capable the warden is. As in the game, the wardens don't seem to have eyes, and in the same way, my interpretation has eyes, but they are like not functional at all, the same way as moles. It is their noses, their whiskers, and their ears that do all of the work for them, you know? I could say that in some way the warden used to be worshipped by the people living in the ancient cities, especially after seeing that the Wither was defeated by a warden, which is insane. I could go into the Wither in like a different video, but basically the Wither is like the god of plague and misery and death and everything that's associated with death. Another cool thing about the Warden is that they usually just sleep all fucking day. They're big creatures. They hibernate kind of like bears do. And this is why they can pack such a big burst of energy when they're actually threatened. They also have very thick fur and very thick skin, and a lot of fat stored under their skin that helps them adapt to the cold environment of the caves. Bathing in water makes their fur like really heavy, so wardens preferably bathe in dust and stones and gravel, that kind of thing. Kind of like how chinchillas bathe in dust, you know? And a fun little piece of trivia about the warden is that baby wardens are called skippers. Kawaii. Yeah, I don't want to make this video any longer, so if you guys want me to dive in to the other mobs, for example, I really want to dive into the villagers and villagers, because I have a lot of written about him, honestly. So, yeah, if you guys like this video, I'm gonna work on another one, maybe another one, until I have all the mobs. Honestly, I haven't, like, talked about Minecraft too much ever since I started being into Garden Batman, which is back in, like, 2023, like, early 2023, I guess. So it's been a long time since I even brought up this Minecraft interpretation kind of world. I call it MINNJORD. Anyways, love you guys.
Butter.